First question is from Colleen Tolentino. She asks, why with research can no one figure out yet how to get this spike protein out of us? I truly feel that is a big part of my long COVID. I can't clear it. And why are people's symptoms all over the place, from nervous system symptoms to gastrointestinal to brain to heart? And like, I don't understand this virus. I'm just sick of being sick for 3 years. It's a good question. And I was thinking a little bit about this. And the basic answer is that your own body has a lot of ways of getting rid of toxins. And you have to ask why it doesn't get rid of toxins. If it's not getting rid of toxins, what's the reason for it not getting rid of them? So our own bodies can decide what, like if, for example, there's so many different ways that this could work, right? It could be, although I doubt it, but let's just say like the worst possible scenario that it's like edited your genome and it's like expressing spike protein. Your body can choose what gets expressed and doesn't get expressed from your genome, right? So it's not like something external is causing something else to be expressed. Your own body is allowing what gets expressed to be expressed. And your body can shut it off. Or what if your microbiome has been gene edited and it's expressing spike protein? Well, your own immune system is allowing that to happen, right? So really, I mean, this gets at a conundrum, which is really at the core of health and illness, and even at the core of like our existence, like our lives and the meaning of reality, right? And so reality is something that's manifested by our soul. All right. So this is, I know it's going to sound crazy, but just bear with me, I guess, or turn off the stream if you don't believe in the soul. So basically the soul is what manifests your physical reality, your physical body, and whether you're sick or well or whatever. And the soul is, in a sense, trying to tell you something, right? There's something wrong with you. And this universe is manifesting whatever's wrong with you in the form of what goes wrong in your life, what goes wrong in your health, in your life, whatever, right? And so people don't actually start to make progress until they take radical responsibility for themselves. That's when you start to make real progress, is when you stop blaming other people, you stop blaming even the spike protein, honestly, right? It's just a means of expressing something that your soul needs to express in your body and your life. Now we can discuss like the mechanisms by which your soul accomplishes this expression, like the mechanisms of it deciding, or the mechanisms by which your body doesn't detox the spike protein the way somebody else's body does detox the spike protein, right? We can get into the nitty-gritty of the mechanisms, but it doesn't really matter. A broad kind of overview is basically that your detox pathways are shut. They're not open, right? And that can be because of years and decades, usually decades of these problems from your soul manifesting in certain organs, leading to them becoming depleted of micronutrients so they can't function as well, and becoming clogged with toxins and pathogens, which also prevent them from functioning as well. And so then the detox organs that are, affected in that way, they can't detoxify, the old stuff, let alone the new stuff that comes in. And eventually you hit a breaking point where you manifest a disease. Even though your body has been trying to manifest a quote unquote disease for decades, right? But it was manifesting it like the way of the universe is to be gentle at first, usually, right? So you get like a gentle nudge initially, and then the nudge gets a little bit stronger, and eventually it turns into a shove, and then eventually you fall down the stairs, and then there's like somebody screaming at you, like a drill sergeant or whatever, right? Like the universe and yourself are trying to wake you up to the thing that's actually wrong with you. And so when you're younger, the messages are pretty mild usually, and then they get more and more, loud and severe as time goes on, as you ignore them or as you suppress them or whatever. So So really, in order to heal, you need to accept that the disease is like your experience of the disease isn't actually the disease that you have. It's not the actual problem that you have. Your experience of it, the symptoms that you have, are basically your body trying to solve the problem. Like your body is at a physical level. So at a physical level, the symptoms mean a couple of things, right? So first of all, they're like a sign to you that there's something wrong. You have to pay attention here, that there's something wrong with you at a deep level, which is manifesting as this physical problem. And then the second layer of meaning is that it's your own physical body trying to root out the pathogen or the toxin that is the cause of the symptoms. So what I'm saying here is not that the toxin pathogen necessarily is directly causing the symptom, but that your body's attempt to get rid of it causes symptoms. Okay. So the symptoms aren't the problem. The symptoms are a physical kind of like attempt to solve the problem, the physical problem, which is the toxin or the pathogen or the lack of nutrients. And even those problems aren't the actual problem. The real problem is like a psychological toxin, quote unquote, pathogen / lack of nourishment. So anyway, I mean, I've talked about this before. It's a little bit, woo-woo and complicated, and maybe it doesn't float some people's boat, but that's just the way it is. That's what health and disease actually are. And so in order to solve a health and disease just at the physical level, in order to get rid of the symptoms, at a physical level, strictly, what you would do is you would help your detox organs work properly, help your immune system do its job of getting rid of the spike protein. And the only way to do that is to give yourself the proper nourishment that a human being needs, right? That your body expects. How do you determine what that is? You imagine in your mind that you existed on this planet 10,000 years ago. What would your life have looked like? Okay. That natural environment of 10,000 years ago is the environment that your body needs to function properly. That includes a certain amount of sunlight, a certain amount of grounding, a certain amount of like whole foods, clean foods, lack of toxins, even interpersonal connection, right? Tribal connections, right? So love and affection and, intimacy, and a lot of personal connections. Those impact our health, right? You need to, and then there's certain things that you can believe and not believe about reality and about health and illness that will create nocebo or placebo effects. And there's emotions, right? You need healthy emotions, and you need to get rid of like too much anger and too much fear. And so all of these different things are interconnected, and you need to avoid like EMFs and, toxins and pollution and et cetera. All of that stuff that people just don't want to have to like worry about or address or whatever is required for your body to work properly. Okay. And for everything else that's part of you to work properly, your heart, your mind, your soul, whatever. Like you need certain things. You are subject to certain like rules, natural laws. And when people decide to take all of that stuff really seriously, then things start to shift for them. And if you're stuck in this, like, let me just find like an easy way out solution, if that hasn't worked for 3 years, it's unlikely to work, right? That you're just going to find some hack that just like hacks the system and makes the symptoms go away. And if you are able to find a hack, I'm not saying that hacks don't exist. They do exist. You don't actually solve your real problem, right? Your real problem is the lack of nourishment and the excess of toxins and pathogens. And unless you solve the real problem, the hack will just make the real problem worse, because it's not going to make the real problem go away. The real problem will continue. So you have to take the lifestyle part of things very seriously. And then you need some guidance from somebody, because there's a lot of things that seem like they'd be beneficial, like fasting and cold plunging or sauna or this or that, right? And yet there's like so many different things that like, which ones do you choose? Red light therapy, this or that. Like, how do you combine them? There's a million things literally that you could do. You can go online now and you can find a million different things that are suggested for long COVID. I mean, some of them you can't even find them until you know what to look for. And then you like connect like colostrum and long COVID and you find that there's research on it, and it's like, Okay, does that mean I should take colostrum? Well, maybe, right? Like colostrum also has kind of like pro-estrogenic effects, and a lot of people are, too estrogen, they have too much estrogen from xenoestrogen, and leading to upregulation of estrogen. And so maybe not, right? Maybe it's not a good idea in your particular case to take that one thing that you've fallen in love with that has helped some people with long COVID. So you need somebody like Shabazz, who works with me at mygotodoc.com/Hakeem to kind of guide you through and tell you, because it's not always what you feel inclined to that's going to help you. And oftentimes it's not. It's what you're disinclined towards that you actually need the most. And that's just because the things that people do are the things that get them sick. And then, the things that means, like the things that you like, the things that you're inclined to are the things that you tend to overdo. And usually you have to like do the opposite to get better. You have to go against your inclinations to get better. All right. And why are people's symptoms all over the place? I mean, it's really like the symptoms are like a message to you, and the message you're going to get is the message you need to get. And it's usually linked to the organ system or whatever that has been weakened by years of like an imbalanced psyche, right? So if you have a certain, a particular imbalance in your psyche, then it will lead to an imbalance in a particular organ system or a certain area. And a lot of times these things run in families, right? So you could call it genetic, or you could just call it like, it's actually not so much genetic as it is that there's a psychic transfer of like imbalance from generation to generation. And that tells your genes what to express and not express. Your lifestyle and your thoughts and your emotions and all this stuff can actually turn off those genes that you got from your parents and turn on healthy genes. So genes are not your destiny. They're like your possibility space. It's like from amongst these possibilities, we're going to choose which ones to turn on and turn off. And all of that depends on environment and lifestyle in its totality. I'm talking about what you think, what you feel, how you interact with people, how you live your life, the environment that you're in. So not just the physical environment and the physical choices, but emotional and mental choices, and choices of association, and how you relate to other people. All these things, relationship choices and things, will help to determine which genes are turned on and turned off. And ultimately, everything is very meaningful, right? So it's not all random, right? So when you start to understand this, you start to realize that your life has tremendous meaning, and everything that happens to you, everything that seems to go wrong in your health is tremendously meaningful. And it's all part of like a grand tapestry of meaning that, if you can learn to read it, then, you start to understand the meaning of your own existence, why you're actually here, and you start to get on the journey of change that you're meant to be on. So if you're sick of being sick, then you need to do something different. So try something new. And I can guarantee that talking to Shabazz will be something new. And I mean, some people may have done a lot of different parts of the protocol that he recommends before, but there will be a new piece and a new combination. And eventually, if not sooner, eventually at some point in talking to him, it's at some point in the follow-ups, he will start to hit on the psychological thing that is the thing that you haven't solved. And if you're willing to do that work, then it will solve your health problem and also other problems. Chris Lumley says, Dr. Haider, there seems to be a lot of hype lately about infrared and near infrared beds at facilities that can help with cell repair and fat shrinkage, i.e. damage caused by COVID in general. Is this a legitimate treatment, or are these ads simply offering empty promises? So infrared, near infrared is very helpful, and it's often part of our protocols for people. You can get a infrared sauna blanket or an infrared sauna. The sauna blanket's the cheapest. Heat Healer is a brand that works. You can also just sit outside in the sun. Okay, so you can get as much or more infrared from just sitting in the sun. as you can get from an infrared sauna or near infrared. So you can get the same benefit from sun, but there's probably a big placebo effect to the infrared beds and the saunas and whatever, and sometimes even a nocebo effect from the sun, because people just they believe it's harmful to be out in the sun. They think it's going to age their skin and everything, and actually photoaging is probably not from sunlight as much as it is from light that's passed through glass and that's not. So anyway, this is an interesting theory brought up by Jack Kruse and other people on X or Twitter in the last year, about how there's this really famous picture of a truck driver, and one side of his face is like tremendously aged, wrinkly, and like lizard skin, and the other side is relatively normal. And it's the left side that is really bad and the right side that looks relatively normal. And so the dermatologist would put up this picture and say, see, like the window that was open next to, right next to his left side, the driver's side window must have always been open, so he photoaged his skin, and the other side that wasn't exposed to so much direct sun wasn't photoaged. And so Jack Kruse actually talks to these truck drivers, and what he said was that actually they roll up their window and roll down the other window that's far away from them on the right side. So if anything, he would have gotten sunlight filtered through clear glass, which would have removed a lot of the beneficial wavelengths. And on the other side, he would have gotten more natural light. And somebody went into a car and they took a electromagnetic meter to measure the, where the more natural light was coming from if you did that. And it obviously came from the right side. And the reason that they roll up their window is because there's a lot of noise and stuff, and when they're driving, and maybe pollution or whatever, and so they tend to roll up their window and roll down the other window. So who knows what this guy was doing, but the point is that there is some reason to believe that healthy amounts of sun will be less damaging than filtered light, which is not whole sunlight. And anyway, sunlight is a necessary ingredient. This is a necessary nutrient. And the infrared, so one of the things that clear glass does is it cuts out half of the infrared that's in sunlight, and it exposes you to more of the blue light without the balancing infrared. And it takes out the infrared A and the infrared B, I think. So it's missing some of the balancing and nourishing aspects that are in whole sunlight. So anyway, you need infrared, and you need all forms of sunlight. You need whole sunlight, and it synchronizes your circadian rhythms. It also activates POMC, pro-opioid melanocortin, which splits into 10 different hormones. And it, when you talk about circadian rhythm, it's basically synchronizing all your hormones, not just those 10 from POMC, but it's telling all your hormones when to be high and when to be low and when to be in between. So nothing really works in your body without exposure to sunlight. And it goes even farther than that. I mean, there's a lot of quantum mechanical effects of sunlight, and it adds energy to our bodies in ways that are poorly understood. It structures water. It activates mitochondria. It splits water molecules along with melanin in order to create, electrons and hydrogen and oxygen. And it does all kinds of stuff that's really important. But yeah, it works, and it's something that people are deficient in. It's essentially a deficiency problem, right? So people are deficient in infrared, and then you can get infrared, and you can also get more infrared than you would from just sunlight, perhaps. Although from what I've read and from what I've seen, you actually get more infrared from sunlight and more intense than you do from the saunas. But you're going to get a sauna is beneficial in its own way. So sitting in a little box or a enclosed space or inside a sauna blanket will heat you up, perhaps more than you would heat up sitting out in the sun. Although, it depends. Nowadays it's December, so in, most areas in the US, it's probably going to be more effective in a sauna to heat your body up. So heating is part of the benefit, and then the infrared has its own benefit. So yeah, I don't think it's empty promises, but you got to check into each specific instance of it to see whether it's being done properly. Check EMF exposures and check, flicker and the light bulbs. So like sunlight doesn't have any flicker, but every light bulb, I mean, as far as I know, has flicker. There's and it's especially bad when you're looking at it, but it may also affect your skin to have flickering light bulbs. Even if they're flickering so fast you can't tell, it has an effect. And so really, sunlight is always best, but we often do recommend the heat healer sauna blanket. Paul O'Malley says, does the spike protein debris from the original infection naturally leave the body? It can, but not necessarily. And it all depends on, like, going back to the first question, what your soul needs to express. I know it sounds ridiculous, but this is the truth, okay? It's like, what does your body need to tell you right now? Does spike protein help your body tell you what it needs to tell you? And if it does, then your body's going to keep it there. And so you can override this decision by sweating every day and like doing coffee enemas and drinking fluids and urinating a lot and like doing all these things and taking ivermectin and all this stuff, right? Like you can overcome your the decision of yourself to try to express something to you. And this gets at like all this physical stuff can overwhelm the disease process, like a situation where you're not bothered by disease. But in order to really truly heal at a deep level and not be prone to that same disease the next time you see it, the next time you get exposed to spike protein, you have to dig deeper and you have to fix the deeper problem that the disease is pointing towards. And when you fix that, then the body will actually normalize, and the organs that were affected and that weren't detoxing properly will become nourished again, and you'll rebuild your functional capacity to detox things without having to really think about it. So hopefully that makes sense. I know it's I have to like go through the whole thing over and over again, and I've done it so many times now I feel like shy to like repeat myself again, because most of you have probably heard my spiel already. I just had a strange something. I'm not sure what. Alicia Shum says, prenatal vitamins, are they necessary? Is chlorella safe during pregnancy? And when and if to drink raspberry leaf tea? I don't know anything about raspberry leaf tea. And chlorella should be safe during pregnancy, although in pregnancy, the only issue with chlorella is that it helps to bind and remove toxins, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest doing that during pregnancy. So maybe not, right? It's, if there is a safe toxin binder, then it's that, but you don't necessarily want, I don't know, maybe it should be okay. I mean, it's binding, but like pregnancy is a special situation where you might need to put things on hold in order to protect the child. So you should talk to somebody. I can't really suggest what to do in pregnancy. And prenatal vitamins, like in some situations they're beneficial, in other situations they may be harmful, right? So like certainly you want to get enough folic acid, but the best prenatal vitamins would be like raw eggs and cooked eggs and raw liver and cooked liver and organ meats and eggs. Those are the best vitamins. And really you should be using prenatal vitamins like for 2 years before the pregnancy, right? But if you need to catch up, that's something different. So you can overdo vitamins, and they're not always harmless the way they're made out to be. Chris Kresser, Chris Masterjohn are some pretty good resources for kind of like the functional medicine perspective on vitamins. If you want like what I would do, then I would talk to Shabazz. I don't know the answer, but basically the answer is like avoid toxins. I mean, this is, a general answer would be to everyone can do this safely who's pregnant, is avoid toxins as much as possible and pack in, really nutritious stuff. Beyond that, getting into the details of whether your particular situation requires like particular vitamins or chlorella or raspberry leaf tea, you should talk to a practitioner like Shabazz, mygotodoc.com/Akeem. Lillian says, I have an odd question. I've had long COVID since March of 2020, during which I totally lost my sense of smell and have altered taste. Fast forward almost 5 years and I took a bad fall, hit my head and got knocked out. Not sure how long I was out. Now, a week or so later, I'm noticing that I'm starting to notice I can smell a lot of things again. What's up with that? Movements have changed. So yeah, I mean, I think that you can kind of reset your nervous system. So there was like a soft reset or hard reset of your nervous system after the fall. And I think that a lot of the neurological things are due to like what you could kind of say are software problems. It's not a problem of the hardware. It's not like physical, like links are not there anymore, or they're broken, or they're not working, or they're damaged. It's like the software is not running properly on the hardware, which is fine. And so, yeah, this is kind of the best way I can explain it in layman's terms. And this applies to a lot of things. I think it applies to lingering coughs after COVID, and it applies to a lot of the symptoms that can happen after COVID also. So this, in my experience, personal experience, I think this is why cold plunging helped me. It was kind of like shock therapy that shocked my nervous system out of its fight or flight state and helped it to reset. And there's different ways people use to do this reset or reboot. And one is with the stellate ganglion block, which shuts off all, sympathetic nervous system signals for like an hour and then turns them back on. And cold plunging is another way. And I wouldn't recommend falling and hitting your head or getting knocked out for sure. So being knocked out is not necessarily helpful or beneficial, but I'm glad that you felt better afterwards. Dana Shaver says, is ivermectin safe for use in pregnancy? A friend has tested positive for COVID. Okay, is ivermectin safe for use in pregnancy? Probably. Again, I would talk to somebody about actually using it. It traditionally has been avoided in pregnancy because of concerns about the blood-brain barrier of the fetus. And so it would be better to not use it and to use something else like hydroxychloroquine. There's always more than one solution to a problem. Ivermectin is not the only solution for whatever you're using it for. A friend has tested positive for COVID. I think they've been in the hospital since November 19th. She's 30 weeks pregnant and is currently in for severe polyhydramnios with no underlying cause. Normal AFI ranges 16 and 24. My typical AFI before reduction is around 47.5. Amniotic fluid index. She's just wondering if there are any known problems with using the ivermectin while pregnant. Yeah, so there are some known concerns with using it, and that it might pass through. It can be neurotoxic if you don't have a blood-brain barrier, and fetuses are currently thought to not have a functioning blood-brain barrier, and even very, very young children. But on the other hand, some people have said, we've never seen any problems using it in pregnancy or in very young children. So I would consult somebody in person and just use an alternative. There's no need to take any risk. Just use something else. Lily Vo says, any tips for gaining weight? Ultimately, I don't think tips and tricks are what you need for gaining weight, but colostrum, milk and eggs, this is what people did to gain weight. Drinking things, you can get a lot more calories in, but it's not so much the calories as it is the hormonal response of your body. So colostrum is really good at stimulating growth hormones, essentially. And you gotta try to figure out what the underlying reason is that you're not gaining weight and address that, what the underlying emotional core of the problem might be, and address that. So a lot of the emotional cores nowadays have something to do with fear expressed in some way, right? So, somebody might be very angry, but the root of that is fear. Somebody could be, or just fearful or anxious, So like just looking for like a food trick or something, again, you can overcome your body's attempt at telling you something without actually solving the problem. Then the problem just either gets worse, the underlying problem gets worse, or it shifts into some other problem. And that's not what you need, right? So you need to gain weight in a healthy way. So, that requires knowing a few more things about you. But like all else being equal, foods that help people gain weight are going to be, especially raw milk, if you can get raw milk and raw eggs. But milk, eggs, and you'd want to check into your thyroid and make sure that you're not hyperthyroid. And if you are, again, there's a reason for it, right? You have to ask what the reason is. Why are you hyperthyroid? So that's kind of like the first thing that would come to mind if somebody's not able to gain weight. You got to make sure they're not hyperthyroid. And if it's not you, if it's somebody else, you got to make sure there's nothing like, they're not throwing up or something to make themselves stay skinny and not telling you about it. So I don't know. It's a big topic. Janet Ustaskas says, so is it true with nicotine patches, do they really help with long COVID effects? I had never heard of this one and I've researched a lot. Also, I want to quit vaping, so this will help with both. Yes, it is true that nicotine patches can help with the symptoms of long COVID, but I don't generally recommend them anyway. Again, it's one of those things, there's a lot of things that can help get rid of your symptoms, but they're not all good for you. So nicotine also diminishes it decreases your immunity in general. So while it might help displace spike protein, there's other ways of doing that. You don't have to use nicotine. Ivermectin and, nattokinase and all these other, things. Go to mygotostack.com and check out the detox spike buster, and that'll help you get rid of spike protein and help you get better from long COVID. So nicotine can help, but, maybe using it short term, might be okay, but long-term use, I would avoid. And I would even avoid long-term use of pretty much most things, right? Even the spike buster, I might not use it like for the rest of my life, right? I would consider using it short term, maybe for a year or two until you get better. I mean, if you're not getting better, there's something you're not doing right. Change your approach. But yeah, I think it's better than vaping. Is better than the patches even. So try to get it in the most natural way possible with the least amount of chemicals, so there's like sticky gunk on the patch. Maybe it's not that big of a deal, but try to be as natural as possible with the nicotine. But yeah, I would stop the vaping. Vaping, I think, is harmful in its own ways. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, I agree. Folic acid is not a good choice, is what should be taken, especially when pregnant. Yes, you're right. So thanks for the correction. Nancy says, yes, food is either disastrous for our bodies or beneficial. Iodine is why so many have thyroid conditions, also pesticides and herbicides. Yeah, absolutely. So, it's hard to go wrong with real food. And the most nutritious food is going to be, and there are some things that we can't get without using animal products. And yet, for some people, when they're healing, like they have to go through a phase where they avoid animal products, or at least some animal products, or focus on the highest ROI animal products, like the organs. So usually, we recommend people go all vegetarian, except keep organ meats and sometimes sardines, and so get like really, really super high quality animal products, like the top in terms of nutrient density of the animal products. I'm long COVID and real issues with breathing, exhaustion, but vitamin D have filled in the bald spots from so much hair loss. I had COVID in February 11th, 2020 when it first came out. Yeah, so breath work is something I would recommend highly for any breathing issues, as well as, sunlight I would recommend for the vitamin D and the bald spots. Infrared can help with both, with the bald spots. But in the winter, it's likely that just cold itself stimulates the production of UV biophotons in the mitochondria, which themselves convert cholesterol to vitamin D. The same way sunlight exposure from UV photons from the sun creates vitamin D in your skin. There's this theory, and I think it's likely because there has to be a lot of different fail safes, right? Not just like, okay, we're gonna eat the cod liver oil in the winter and get a lot of sun in the summer so that we make it through the winter fine. But there's probably something inside your own body that also helps you to make it through the winter if you're living in a northern latitude. So in the wintertime, like now, for a lot of people, if it's cold, you need to feel cold. You need to regularly feel cold, right? So go outside with less than you would normally wear, maybe. Do it safely, do it, prudently. Don't overdo it and get sick or whatever. But, make sure to continue getting your sun and going outside and not being constantly in like a perfectly temperature controlled environment. This is what I would say. But basically, vitamin D deficiency itself can be corrected, obviously, with taking vitamin D, but I'm not sure what the question mark is for, Nancy. So you'll have to write out the question. Why cold? Well, I'm saying cold because, like I was just saying, that cold, there's this gets into like a realm of science that I'm not very well versed in, but it's basically this idea that every spot on Earth, if you're exposed to the natural variations of the seasons, including temperature, cold. So if you're exposed to natural variations of season, you will be healthy and you'll get everything you need throughout the year. And so if you're on the equator, it's the same all the time, right? So there's no variation basically in the seasons or in the temperatures or whatever. You're just exposed to a lot of sun all the time. But if you go up north, part of this is that sunlight is quantized, which means that you get the same amount of total UV within a year as you do far up north, but you just get more in the summer than you do in the winter if you're up north. So you get more UV in the summer, and you may get less, although it's probably not as less as we think it is. Okay. And also the cold makes, so the sun will trigger, so we have basically, our body works on a DC electrical current. And so we have superconductors within all of our tissues that transfer electrons, to make electrons move. And so this is our bioelectricity, and this is what leads to human functioning. And the sun will actually trigger the movement of electrons. It'll raise the energy of electrons in the superconductive tissues and get them moving, right? And cold will lower the amount of energy that needs to enter this superconducting tissue in order to get the electrons moving. So when it's cold, you don't need as much sun. And there's this other theory that will directly stimulate mitochondria to release biophotons, so like light that the mitochondria make. And it sounds crazy, but this is something that we know happens, is that our bodies create light within us, right? All the cells of our body, especially when they divide, create light. And certain wavelengths of light will create vitamin D. Does the cold enhance the absorption of vitamin D? Is that where you're in? No. I'm not saying cold enhances the absorption of vitamin D. What I'm suggesting is, again, this is not proven, this is theoretical, that cold stimulates light to be produced inside our bodies by our mitochondria. And that light acts just like sunlight. Like sunlight makes vitamin D in our skin. Internal light may make vitamin D during the winter. But anyway, I mean, this is getting into the weeds here. Basically, what I'm saying is that a vitamin D deficiency is not only a vitamin D deficiency, it's really a light deficiency. So vitamin D is made by light. It's made by light, whether you eat it or whether you get it from sunlight directly on your skin. The reason it's made by light when you eat it is because the food was exposed to light. And that's what made vitamin D in the food in the first place, right? Like in the cod liver or whatever that you're consuming. So light does a lot more than just create vitamin D. Light does vitamin D plus a million other things. And so the food is giving you all the benefits of the light beyond just the vitamin D, right? It's a whole package. And the sunlight is also giving you all the benefits, not only of vitamin D, but all the other benefits of sunlight, right? Which I briefly mentioned earlier, triggering all these different hormones and changing a lot about our biology and the makeup of our water and our cells and everything, right? So it's doing a lot of different things. And maybe you get similar signals of light information from the food that has the vitamin D in it as you get from direct exposure to sunlight. But there is no alternative to direct exposure to sunlight. Sure, you can raise your vitamin D level, but vitamin D, again, is not all you need. You need everything that the sun does for you. So a low vitamin D, you should interpret it as I have a sunlight deficiency. Everyone who has low vitamin D should interpret it that way. Again, so this is something I haven't talked about in a while, but there's two forms of vitamin D. There's an active and an inactive form. Most people will check the inactive form of vitamin D because it's cheaper, and they won't check the active 25-dihydroxy D3. So you need to check the active form of D to know whether you actually are deficient in the active form of D, because the inactive form can be very low while the active form is very high. And then supplementing may not be helpful. So I would refer you guys to an article on autoimmune disease that I wrote about vitamin D and autoimmune disease on blog.mygotodoc.com. And it's based on a theory that's, I think, 15 years old now, that I, in part at least, subscribe to, that a lot of autoimmune disease appears to get better when you give vitamin D, because vitamin D is acting as a steroid hormone in those people and suppressing the immune system. It's not activating the immune system, it's actually suppressing the immune system and stopping the immune system from attacking cells that have been infiltrated by pathogens and toxins. So can you explain why red light therapy is great, which it is, but confused on the LED light aspect of it when LED lighting is bad for you? So LED lighting, the reason it can be harmful is that it can expose you to harmful electromagnetic fields. So, and normal LED lighting, like when you normally have LED lights, they don't have a lot of red in them. So if you're somewhat removed, or if you're not, so much exposed to the EMF that's being put off by the LED light, then you can perhaps benefit from the effect of the light itself. And so basically, red light is beneficial. And it has an anti-inflammatory effect. And like I said before, it's like over 50% of sunlight is red and infrared and near infrared. And all of that red that's in sunlight naturally, and in firelight and in candlelight, helps to balance some of the inflammatory effects that are found in the blue light, which is also found in firelight and sunlight and candlelight, right? So natural light has the whole spectrum of colors in it, and certain parts of that spectrum help to balance out other parts of the spectrum. Now, blue light is not entirely bad. It's not just inflammatory. Blue light's also necessary, but while you're getting the necessary part of the blue light, it can become harmful if it's not counteracted by red light. So basically, it's just like a whole food. If you refine sunlight and you take out certain parts of the spectrum and you just get exposed to other parts of the spectrum, you're going to get some of the benefits, but you might also get harmed because it's no longer naturally balanced. Okay. I do know you can buy the incandescent bulb separately, but most red light therapy lights are LED. Yeah. I've never heard of red incandescent bulbs, but if you can find them, it's fine. So, I mean, LED, yeah, again, it's a matter of proximity and stuff. And even like with the sauna blanket, like you're right next to it, you have to weigh the risks versus the benefits, right? So there's going to be some, EMF exposure, but you're getting the benefit of the red light. And, at the end of the day, it seems to be more beneficial than harmful, and actually helps people a lot. Because most people can't afford to buy a full-on sauna, for $5,000 or whatever, where the LED lights are a little farther away from you, and then there's like better versions of those saunas that have better quality LED lights, and they're EMF shielded and all kinds of stuff, right? And they have better wiring that reduces flicker and reduces EMFs itself, right? And they're grounded, and then you're getting into the even more expensive saunas. So like you can get better no matter how much, whether you can afford $500 or $5,000. Obviously, if you can easily go for that instead of the sauna blanket. And she said, I appreciate the meeting and I'm grateful for your info and your time. I'll join your blogs. Great. Andrew says, that's why they say go to the beach to heal. Absolutely. Yeah. Or into your yard or onto your balcony or onto the rooftop or somewhere, right? So everyone can find some time. And if you can't do it every day, do a lot more on the weekends, right? Just do more at certain times. Nancy says, are you on YouTube and Instagram, and do you have a book? You sound so honest and forthcoming. So I don't have a book, but my blog is the size of a book at this point. So it's my go-to doc. Let me see. But I don't know that everything streams to YouTube. And really, I haven't done a whole lot on YouTube other than what I do here. So you're going to find the same stuff here as you find on YouTube, probably. Yeah, we're on YouTube, but I used to do a lot more on YouTube. I used to do all these like interviews and stuff. One place that you can go and get a lot of my interviews from would be longcovidreset.com. I did a bunch of interviews. It was tons of interviews. I just got tired of it after a while. So we did summits, 2 years in a row, and have tons of interviews there. But I would check out my gotodoc.com/Hakeem. Check out Hakeem Shabazz. But the blog is probably a great place to go and get a lot of information on this approach. And all right. Avent Blakeney Cherney says, could my tremors, POTS, blood pressure issues, and feelings of being stuck in fight or flight and extreme constipation with vagus nerve damage from the vaccine, or could it be vagus nerve damage from the vaccine? And will that resolve with the attention to lack of nutrients and removal of toxins? I've been through a 6-week elimination diet, 4 months of natto, bromelain, and curcumin, and 4 weeks of holistic detox. I haven't done ivermectin. None of the issues have been resolved, and some are increasingly worse. Not sure if it's relevant, but I'm also compound heterozygous for MTHFR. I've been to the ER, urgent care, 5 different specialists, functional doctor, acupuncture. Obviously, I should start over with my go-to doc. Yeah, so yes, it will resolve with attention to lack of nutrition and removal of toxins, but you have to go deeper, right? You have to get into the emotional toxins, the belief toxins. So like beliefs that are toxic to you that you hold dear, or maybe just hold, and they might not be things that you're actively thinking about a lot, but they're there and they're having a nocebo effect, which is the opposite of the placebo effect. And toxic interactions and toxic, memories and toxicity from deep trauma that happened to you or your parents or your grandparents, right? That can affect you. So yeah, if you address every kind of toxin in your life and you address it properly and you address it for long enough, yes, you will get better. And then at the same time, you have to usually kill pathogens too. So it's not just a holistic detox, but you have to include antimicrobials to kill off certain pathogens. Probably everyone nowadays has a whole host of like pathogens that have overgrown, including mold and parasites and all kinds of stuff, right? That stuff needs to be gotten rid of. You need things that include biofilm busters to help get to those. You need to boost your immune system to help you, deal with those. And then on the nourishment side of the equation, it's again not just physical micronutrients and sun and grounding, and it's also emotional nutrition or nourishment, and the right thoughts and the right beliefs and the right, everything has to get back into a state of balance. And so it really is comprehensive healing. And this is the only way to really deeply heal. And for some people, it's the only way to heal their physical problem, is to find it, like they've gotten to the end of their rope. Okay. Their body, they've just been ignoring their problems for so long that like earlier, and they've been covering them up and they've been suppressing them, and they've been building and building underneath these band-aids, all kinds of band-aids, right? So everything that doesn't take you, like your whole being, into account is some sort of hack, right? Even if it seems natural. So the example of this, there's a few examples of this, but if you have diabetes, type 2 diabetes, right? You weren't born with it, maybe it hit you in your 40s or something after being overweight all your life and under a lot of stress and whatever, on and on and on, and high blood pressure, and it just kept getting worse. And finally you develop diabetes in your 40s, right? And then you come across somebody on Twitter, they're like, the low carb dietitian, the low carb doctor. And you start reading all these posts about how people got rid of their diabetes by going super low carb, right? Okay, yeah, you can get rid of the high blood sugar by going low carb, but even if you do that for, a year or two, and then you start eating carbs again, oftentimes the diabetes will come right back, right? So you haven't actually cured diabetes. You've found a natural hack to get rid of the symptoms of the diabetes, right? You're basically focusing on the symptoms. You're not focusing on the deeper, causes, which are toxins and pathogens and lack of nutrients. At a physical level. And then at an emotional level, there are certain corresponding toxins and quote unquote pathogens and lack of nutrients that correspond with the physical ones. So there are a lot of approaches. Most approaches are just hacks that help you, that relieve you of the symptom that you're concerned about without actually completely fixing the root cause of that symptom, right? So the symptom is a message. It's telling you that there's a deep root cause to me. There's something causing me. And it's not just physical toxins and pathogens and lack of nutrients. It goes deeper than that, because we are deeper than that. We're not just like nematodes. We're not just physical beings. We're also emotional beings. We have an emotional life that deeply connects to our physical being. Okay. Like this is like well proven by now. This is not something that's, flimsy science. We have decades of science that proves that your emotional state directly affects your physical being. And it's like you don't really have to prove it. Everyone knows that, right? So, I mean, if you've been a human for any amount of time on this planet, you would know that the way you feel affects your physical body. And you just have to take that one step further to encompass everything, not just like, okay, I get nervous and I start shaking because of nerves, or, I blush when I get embarrassed or something, right? Like, it's not just the immediate physical reactions. Also, chronic diseases are also, affected by our emotional state and our beliefs, placebo effects obviously have a lot to do with belief. So getting back to this question, all of these things are related to vagus nerve damage, or not damage. So I don't want to say really damage necessarily. I mean, there can be inflammation seen around the vagus nerve. And again, like the kind of the software running your vagus nerve, as you could say, is off, But really, like, you have to ask, like, why is your being as a whole expressing this to you? And it's something that you have been trying to express to yourself your whole life. It just was never this loud. It wasn't this prominent. And now it is. Now it's very prominent. And the vaccine has enabled it to gain that kind of prominence and to speak with that level of clarity and force and volume to you. And everything happens for a reason, right? Like it happened now because you're able to deal with it now. So this is an invitation to actually fix your deeper problems that go beyond the vaccine, that go deeper than the vagus nerve, that go all the way to the core of your being, right? Who you actually are. Ivermectin helps a lot, but nowadays I just see it as another hack, right? If you just leave it at that. And the reason it's not enough to just leave it at like, okay, I can wave a magic wand, give you ivermectin, all your problems disappear tomorrow. Actually, they haven't disappeared. It's just your awareness of them has disappeared. It's just a really, really nice Band-Aid. Just like the person who decides not to eat carbs anymore and their diabetes disappears within a week or two, it's not actually gone, okay? The thing that's causing you to be diabetic or not able to tolerate carbs, let's just look at the physical level, toxins and lack of nutrients. Those toxins and that lack of nutrients are not gone by eating low carb. You're just not able to see them anymore, right? They're still there and they're actually still damaging you. You're just not aware of it, right? So this is a Band-Aid. It's a really nice Band-Aid. It makes you feel better, right? But it's still a Band-Aid. It's still a cover-up. You're sweeping it under the rug, right? Like you're just making it look like everything is fine when it's not actually fine. So this basic, principle applies to all disease. Okay. If you don't actually, and so no, like people, they're confused. People are confused about the diabetic example because they're like, well, maybe we just eat too many carbs in the modern world. And maybe I just burnt out my, pancreas with eating too many carbs for so long. No, okay. Like human beings are able to tolerate carbs. Okay. No matter where on the planet you are or where your ancestors are from, it's not normal to have diabetes by being exposed to carbs. Before the mid 1800s, there was like diabetes was essentially non-existent on this planet. Like it was incredibly hard to find somebody with diabetes. They existed, but they were like 1 in a billion. All right. They were very, very, maybe 1 in 100 million, very extremely rare. All right. The world expert on diabetes had only seen 6 cases in his entire career in the mid 1800s when he published the book on diabetes. Okay. The Bible on diabetes. So diabetes, just like everything else, just like every other chronic disease, is a toxic syndrome, right? It's only able to be manifested due to toxicity, and that's industrial era toxicity and electrical era toxicity that allows all of these chronic modern diseases to be manifested. We also, that goes hand in hand with civilizational dysfunction and psychological dysfunction that these modern societies create, these modern industrial societies create. So it's always like a reflection of what's actually going on inside us. And so like all the bad stuff on the outside is only there because it's reflecting what's wrong inside of us. And I mean, otherwise we would have, if we didn't have a problem in here, we would have not created so much, so much pollution and problems outside. And so, anyway, I mean, this is getting kind of off track, but let's go and see if there's, I'm not sure what is a chronic degenerative infection, but yes, I would agree that a lot of the times chronic illness is related to a degenerative chronic infection. And that's why I say that problems are usually due to toxins and pathogens, so pathogens are infectious agents. Okay, we're so physically wrecked from so much traumatic events. I get sick every Christmas because it brings back so much unconscious pain. Now I make sure I play music and cry and get out the pain so I'm able to move forward with the holidays. It's never conscious. It comes on when I hear Christmas music. Yeah, I had to do something because my sons couldn't handle seeing me cry ever. Now I go to a park and get it out. It's so refreshing to get it out. Yeah, so this kind of stuff can be dealt with, at a deeper level than even just getting it out, but actually resolving it. is possible, and you just got to talk to the right person. Shabazz is usually that person for most people. So mygotodoc.com/Hakim, Hakim. All right, everyone. We're at about an hour, which I know is kind of short for these live streams, but I just don't like to stare into like super bright blue lights for that long. So unless there's any burning questions, any other burning questions, I guess we're going to call it a day and move on. All right. And I will see everyone same time, same place next week, Wednesday. All right, everyone. Have a great one, and I will see you later.